What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman. I'm here with Austin, Football with Oz. We're back for Against the Blitz, episode 6, and we have a full plate with a dessert on tap for you guys today. And I'm excited to get into this one. I'm a recovering Bills fan. I should have a lot more energy and happiness instead of angst and frustration. So I'm happy to get my mind off of what happened this past weekend and get my mind away from Twitter, because that's been a cesspool and I got pulled in. I knew it was going to be, and I got sucked in. It's my fault.
Yeah. I mean, football feels so much better when you're like your team's not even in it. Honestly, there's no nerves. So you get to just enjoy the angst between two other teams. And my team's been out of it for like over a month now. So like I've been good. I've been so relaxed.
I honestly kind of feel that, like, obviously I'm pissed that the Bills are out, but to some capacity, it's like, now I don't have to stress about the matchup, or now I don't have to worry about, if I'm going to get off for work after they potentially win the Super Bowl, like that kind of bullshit, that very first world problem of me to say, but it comes with its perks, I guess. Except, like I said, the internet this week has been an absolute, just my friend calls it the piss pool, the internet, because of how
literally, all the Ravens fans rejoicing in the it's so sweet. They're so stupid.
Well, today we're going to talk about a different categories for teams and a few players as far as how they performed this season. So we have 4 different categories. The first 2 kind of go without explanation: the teams / a player that exceeded expectations, failed expectations, and then we have teams and players that there is hope for. And then the next category is just called "It is Dark." So it means it's dark, and I feel like you can infer. So let's get right into it. Exceeded expectations. I personally had a hard time kind of shying away from the obvious answers. So I'll start with one. You want to bounce one apiece off of each other?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll start. My number 1 team for this category was Washington. It's not a fun, exciting, crazy answer, but comparing to my preseason expectations for them, I projected them at 5-12. I rode the wave on just about everything when it came to Washington. I had kind of little faith in Daniels, if I'm being honest. I thought they made a mistake going Daniels over May. I wasn't very high on the Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury hire. I even went as far as to say that the way that Washington structured themselves this offseason looked very similar to the environment Bryce Young walked into his rookie season. So safe to say I definitely did not have the highest of expectations for Washington.
Yeah, I would have put them as my number 1 if I didn't assume that you were going to put them as your team. I went with the Broncos, and it wasn't based off of last year's record, because I think they only improved their record by 2 wins, but it was based off of my expectations. I wasn't riding the Bo Nix wave as much as I should have been. I didn't think that Devon Vele being your wide receiver 2, or Marvin Mims being your wide receiver 2 would carry you that far. They don't have a tight end. I didn't think Adam Troutman would be on a playoff team. So it wasn't just their offense, though, because I know their offense averaged 3 more points per game than last year, but their defense allowed 6 less points per game in an already pretty good defense. So those 2 things, they only gained 2 more wins, but the team looked so much better.
Yeah.
Under the Sean Payton experiment.
Absolutely. I mean, after what happened with Sean Payton and Russell Wilson, I think it was fair to criticize Sean Payton with that too. I don't think he went completely without blame after that whole debacle. So they were my number 2. I was kind of riding higher on Bo, especially after the preseason. He kind of showed flashes of what he would soon to be in the regular season, that efficient passer. I would go as far as say that he was even better than I think what I thought of him in the preseason, which was pretty high. I mean, he made throws this year that I did not expect him to make in the system he was playing in. He was aggressive. He would push the ball down the field a little bit more than I think I expected him to in a Sean Payton offense that was supposed to be run heavy. So my biggest gripe with them was, you kind of touched on it. Their defense, like they had, as far as my eyes can tell, absolutely no star power outside of Pat Surtain. And a scheme can only get you so far. You need a player or two to push that scheme over the edge. And it came to be that Zach Allen and Nick Bonito were bona fide stars. Like, sorry, sue me for looking at that depth chart and thinking, wow, there's fucking nobody on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of their roster was either guys that did nothing before, like Benito, or guys that were like kind of average, like Zach Allen or Brandon Jones on their old teams. Like there was nothing that led you to believe that this was going to be like a star, like shut you down kind of defense, but it was, except for the playoffs. But like it was like they were a really good team, like compared to what I thought they would be. I didn't do record predictions, but I probably would have put them like probably like 8-9 maybe. That'd probably be where I put them, similar to last year. I didn't think they got any better, but they did by like a good bit. So props to Sean Payton, I guess.
Yeah, Vance Joseph too. That coaching staff did an excellent job. I had him at 5-12. So as much as I was high on Bo Nix, I mean, I thought so little of that defense. It was the definition of I was unfamiliar with your game. And that applies to this so well. But I skipped over something I wanted to elaborate on after my first selection of Washington, because I feel like people will hear me say what I said about them and the Bryce Young comparison and then think like, how do I possibly not explain myself for that? So I feel like I have to. How, in your mind, when you saw this offseason, what were the big acquisitions for Washington?
Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu. I mean, other than that, not a whole bunch. Their offensive line was a bunch of guys that outperformed like what they used to be. Secondary, Sainristril. That's really like it wasn't anything that's that crazy, really.
Right, and offensively, like Eckler and they got Ertz, like
Olamide Zaccheaus. Like that's doing it for you, like.
And what were the acquisitions for Bryce? It was an older running back in Miles Sanders.
Yeah.
Who else did they go out and get?
Jalen Coker was like their best offseason receiver. Like
Jalen Coker, holy shit.
They fixed the interior line. They got like Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, but it was a bunch of guys like that like are outperforming. They're a bunch of average guys that are kind of now outperforming what they used to be. And in Washington, like their plan to fix their left tackle spot was Brandon Coleman, who was like a 3rd or 4th round pick out of TCU. That was like a projected guard. So like, yeah, I don't blame you at all for being super low on them. I was probably just as low, if not lower. So
yeah. I don't think I saw any pro Commanders propaganda this offseason.
I remember one person. Who was it? Was it like Stephen A. Smith or someone that projected them to win? That like projected them to win the conference or win the division?
Oh.
Somebody did. I thought it was so dumb, but it worked.
Yeah, it worked.
I need to find out who that was because that was ridiculous. I thought they were so stupid.
That's an insane claim to have that to be able to pull that out of your receipt.
Yeah,
like that's like an all-timer. That's an all-time receipt.
I would hang on to that forever. Yeah.
Well, how many more teams did you have for exceeded? I put one more down. Actually, I like
exceeded. I only put those 2.
Okay.
But who else you got?
I had Minnesota as well. Just
yeah.
It felt like they were deserving. I mean, I projected them at 6-11. Now, to my credit, I can quote myself saying that I thought they could have one of, if not the best defense in football this year. I just thought between a very flaky interior offensive line and Sam Darnold, that would be a combination of catastrophe. And it kind of ended up being. Granted, Darius Hall got hurt, which didn't help, but it certainly bit them in the ass down the stretch. But I thought it was going to be a massive issue all year long. But I guess that's credit to Mr. O'Connell there, the soon-to-be coach of the year.
He better be, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that should be a lock. But
it feels pretty chalk at this point, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of shocked I didn't think of them for this category. I guess I kind of felt pretty good about them. I didn't think nearly like they'd be this good. I felt like they could still be like competitive though, I guess, which is why I didn't think of them immediately. But yeah, they definitely outperformed what I thought. Darnold specifically way outdid what I thought. Plus, like I wasn't quite as high on the defense. I should have been. I guess I didn't. I just kind of forgot Brian Flores went there off the top of my head. So
well,
yeah, that's a good one. That's a good pick.
It's all relative to the expectations you had for teams. Like later in the other segments, I certainly have teams that might not apply for other people, but I certainly felt like, especially knowing what I put on record, that they kind of it kind of had to go this way. And for that reason, I also put like as an honorable mention the Steelers, because I would have bet my entire future mortgage on Pittsburgh missing the playoffs and finishing last in the North, and every Steelers fan that I knew was like, "You're an idiot. They're going to go above 500." And I'm like,
they're going to get 500 or maybe one game over.
I literally was like,
no matter what,
was like, it's not happening. It has to end. The streak has to end. I was so adamant.
I mean, that was the worst. I mean, I don't know if it's the worst roster, but it wasn't good. Like, it's not a good playoff roster at all. So, like, I'm not shocked that you wouldn't think from an outside perspective that they're not going to make the playoffs.
I just couldn't believe that he made it work again. Like, Tomlin's like some voodoo shit. The only reason they didn't make this list officially is because they went out in the same sad old fashion as they always do. So.
Yeah. Like, every year they start off hot, and then the People's Commanders, as we're talking about, ruined their first hot streak a couple years ago, ruined their undefeated streak, and then ever since that season, they start hot and they end cold every single time. And I appreciate your Bills for whooping them last time. That was like my best hate watch in a while. So that was I'm happy about that one.
You AFC North fans don't like nobody in your
oh my god, no! There's no camaraderie. Like, there's no respect between team to team. It's like Lamar fans and Burrow fans are at each other. The Browns, everyone just kind of feels bad for. Steelers fans, they're the out. Everyone hates them. They're the outlier.
If this is a random question, but knowing how much George Pickens fits the energy of the Steelers, what other team could he fit energy-wise on?
I mean, other than another AFC North team?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, he could like be a Brown. It has to be like a coach that won't stop him from like doing that. Like a coach that will just let anything happen.
Who would that
be? I don't know. That's why I was like, I don't think Stefanski would do that. He let Watson do what he was doing. You know, I mean, I don't think he's going to get that mad at a few like ref arguments. I mean, historically, he kind of feels like a Raider. You know, like Raiders all used to be kind of like seen as kind of dirty. Richie Incognito days, like they were not a clean team.
That's a good one.
I think he's a Raider in my heart.
That honestly, I had no idea how I would have answered that question. So that
I didn't either.
That was a perfect answer, though. But for exceed expectation player wise, speaking of players, who'd you put down there?
I put Zach Bond for that one. I kind of just wrote his stats from last year to this year. So last year, in 17 games, he had 30 tackles and 4 TFLs. This season, in one less game, he had 151 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, and a first-team All-Pro. And he kind of transitioned from this like hybrid edge rusher linebacker that no one really knew what to do with. He was behind Pete Werner and Demario Davis in New Orleans, and then comes to Philly, and all of a sudden is the starting Mike linebacker as a All-Pro on a possible Super Bowl winning team. So that was like the biggest turnaround like I've ever seen.
Yeah, it feels like Zach Bond might. I mean, I guess he didn't come back from anything, but just based on how they do that award, like he came back from being ass, just like Joe Flacco did.
Yeah, he came back from the bench. Yeah, like like the Geno Smith. It's so weird that like a linebacker of all people is somehow developed over the course of one offseason from like a benchable player to like first team All-Pro level.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know who the linebackers coach is in Philly, but I got to get that guy's name because that whole unit went from being atrocious to phenomenal in one offseason.
I mean, Oren Burks was like an afterthought on every team he's been on. He's like a bench special team star. He comes in and is like an actual like really meaningful player in the playoffs. Like he's one of the ones that's like punching out the footballs and like making huge plays. I feel like I don't know who that guy is, but he should be up for a coordinator job soon.
Seriously, I was thinking that the other day when seeing some of the hires. I'm like, why does no one know the name of the Eagles linebackers coach? Because that's a guy I would be giving a call to.
Yeah, 100%.
But my player for this category was Chuba Hubbard.
Oh yeah,
Chuba Hubbard.
I say Chuba Hubbard, but I don't know.
I say Chuba, and I have been correct.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought he ran hard this year. He played some physical ball at the running back position. And this was the year of the running backs. And he is a big reason for that. I thought he was excellent between the tackles, but he also was a guy that he can get the edge, and he's going to outrun some guys in the secondary. So last year he had 902, which I didn't even realize before I put this all together. But in 2024, he goes for almost 1,200 yards. He had how many yards from scrimmage did he end up having? I don't have that on hand. I didn't write it down. But he had 1,200 yards rushing. The dude scored 10 touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, 11 total touchdowns, actually. Had about 1,300 yards now that I'm seeing it right. It was effective in the air. I think when Bryce Young returned, being able to have that type of safety valve, be able to lean on the shoulder of Chuba Hubbard was integral for Bryce's, confidence to be able to work in that offense. So I exceeded my expectations. I didn't think anything more of him than a guy that was going to fill in for Jonathan Brooks until Brooks kind of at least started to split the load. And all of a sudden he's getting a contract extension 3/4 of the way through the year. Poor Jonathan Brooks tore his knee.
Yeah, what do you do with him?
That's a fair question. I don't know. But I'm going with Hubbard.
Yeah.
Poor Brooks. Like, he might have just injured his way out of a job, but Hubbard, rather, definitely earned it.
Yeah, he was a guy I was, like, not even that high on, really. His running style kind of felt boring. Like, he looks really thin, but he's not that fast. So it's like a weird style. But I mean, I guess there was some benefit of the doubt that like his line was so bad, interior especially, and then they put some money into good guards, and it's not shocking that you see that he can finally get past the line of scrimmage now untouched, and then do the rest. It felt like, I swear to God, he only did that when I played him in fantasy. Like his 2 best games of the year, I made sure of it. I made sure, like, he knocked me out of the playoffs. Like, he went berserk. It was the game he put up like 45 fantasy points.
Yeah, that dude feasted.
Yeah, it was the game he ran somebody over in overtime, and I lost. I don't remember.
I know what you're talking about.
That was it.
Okay.
But yeah, he had a great year, which I kind of forgot about him because he's a Panther, and I forget about Panthers. But like, yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah, he was excellent. I absolutely loved watching Hubbard. I was high on him in fantasy because he was one of those guys that you can get so late. And he was going to have a starting job early on. So I was like, it's worth the flyer. And then he ended up being one of the best value selections, one of the best backs in football. So he definitely deserves.
Zamir White. Yeah.
What was that?
So we don't talk about Zamir White.
No, we don't.
He was on the same level for me.
Oh my God. Zamir White was on a way higher level for me. And I hate to admit that. Like, oh my God. I don't want to say I had this much influence, but I was a very big Zamir White believer. And I have a Discord that does a lot of fantasy around fantasy season. And let's just say a good chunk of us were Zamir White believers. And we were a big cult of losers 3 weeks in, to put it nicely. All right. Let's move on. Let's get into the failed expectations tier. Now, this, I felt like I could have listed like 10 teams, and I kind of did.
I had 2 strongly. It's like 2 teams that I thought like I had really high expectations for that really failed. But who's like your number one if you had to pick between your 10 teams?
My number one was easily the Jets, and
yeah,
for me, it's just because it's like I said earlier, all dependent on what your expectations were for them. And
that's why they weren't on mine. Yeah.
Yep. I fell for it. I got suckered in. I watched too many Aaron Rodgers running out of the tunnel TikTok hype videos, and I bought in. Like, I'll be honest. Like, I saw the talent on paper. I saw what they did last year, and I was like, it's sometimes just a simple puzzle. Just plug the quarterback in the spot where they struggled, and they should be good, right? And that was as far as I thought. I even had them winning the division over the Bills at 11-6. So I was,
oh my god,
yeah, I am ashamed. But then Woody Johnson lets his grandson decline a trade. He fires Robert Saleh because he's embarrassed in front of his UK ambassador friends and because Rodgers pushed him. And then it was just a disaster. There's nothing else to it. I'm ashamed of myself.
If Jerry Jeudy has an 85 overall rating, he's not tradable, I guess, I'm not giving up a 3rd round pick for an 85 overall. That's crazy. That makes so much sense as a owner of like a multi-billion-dollar football team. It feels like that's crazy. But yeah, I put pretty comfortably for me the Bengals.
Yeah.
As looking at their stats from like I picked 2 years ago when Burrow was last like fully healthy for a season when they made the AFC Championship. And the Bengals this season actually averaged almost 2 more points per game. The offense was no problem, but the defense giving up 5.5 more points per game was killer. So going 9-8 in a tough division, but still like 9-8 in your defense giving up 25.5 points per game is not going to cut it for a team that went to the AFC Championship last time they were fully healthy. So not good at all.
Yeah, I put them on my list. After my number 1, it kind of just like a mixed bag, but they were in there.
Yeah.
It sucks because I was a huge Bengals believer this offseason. I had Joe Burrow finishing as my QB1 in fantasy. Jamar as my wide receiver 1 in fantasy. T. Higgins
those weren't that far off.
No, he did finish as wide receiver 1 in fantasy. I was huge on T. Higgins. Like I just knew that this offense was going to go fucking berserk because of the way that last season went, and everybody was down on them, and the expectations were lower, I should say. I just had such a strong feeling. I did not see the defense taking a shit.
That was the problem. Yeah. Well, the guys they brought in did nothing. Like Sheldon Rankins had the bubonic plague and was out with illness for like the last like 6 to 7 weeks of the season. And like everybody else they brought in, Geno Stone was, dare I say, terroristic to the the secondary in Cincinnati. It was awful. Everybody else they brought in was like either didn't play or played horribly. So I think that was more of a GM issue. They actually don't even have a GM. That was a Duke Tobin issue than anything. But I also put the Niners, and I know they had injury, but like they looked terrible. Like in every game, they did not look good. They didn't even look well coached.
Yeah, the Niners once again absolutely have to make this list. If anybody's doing this and you don't have the Niners mentioned to some capacity, you're failing. Just like they did. The Niners, I felt bad for some circumstances that they seem to deal with because I think I watched an interview or read some article about just like all of the off the field issues that they dealt with that I think had to have something to do with the on-field product, like all the stuff that happened with Charvarius Ward, like that was like
terrible.
Awful.
Yeah.
Like I have to imagine that affected the team a little bit. It certainly affected Ward.
Yeah. Like when you started with Ayuk's thing going on, where he was like being the weirdest offseason receiver ever. I thought he was a Steeler for sure. And then he wasn't, and then he stayed, and then he was terrible. And then McCaffrey's done, and Trent Williams is kind of injured. Like it was a weird, really weird thing. And then who was it? Devondre Campbell.
Yes,
like retired in like the middle of a game. Like there was like they had nothing under control, whether like they should have or not. Like it was just like I can't imagine being a season ticket holder and having to watch that every week.
Oh, yeah. I honestly forgot about some of the offseason antics. I was more so thinking about the in-season stuff. But, yeah, wow. I mean, Ayuk was not good. I still remember the throw that Purdy put up for him in the back right corner of the end zone. I don't remember who they were playing, but it like went through his hands. It was like a perfect ball.
Dove, yeah. Oh, my God. I don't remember. Yeah. I remember that.
And everyone was like, buddy, they just gave you a bag. Like, you got to catch that.
Then he did it for like 4 more games, like in a row. Like he had like so many drops in a row, and like they crucified him.
Yeah, I traded for that motherfucker. I'm like,
Oh,
he's gonna go off. He's got to go off, and then he did go off the field. He forever. So
yes, he's done.
Yeah, that was bad. I wasn't even sure McCaffrey had legs. Like,
I don't know.
By week 7, like,
he was able to dress up as the Tid Man and go out on Halloween. And as a McCaffrey holder, I was like, that's my guy. He's almost there. He's almost healthy. And then he was not healthy. He came back and then he died again.
Yeah.
The same week that Jordan Mason also got hurt, so I lost both of them in fantasy.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
Rough scene. That was a
yeah, McCaffrey. I felt bad for him because he probably was so eager to come back, and
he went to Germany. Like he was.
Yes,
he tried so
and
hard.
Saw Frankenstein was the doctor, right?
Yeah,
he was the doctor, right?
Yeah, because Frankenstein's monster was the big green guy. Frankenstein's the sicko behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, fun fact. I'm sure a lot of people didn't know that. Frankenstein was not the monster.
Yeah. Frankenstein, yeah, that's why they call him Frankenstein's monster. Yeah. It's a good pull out.
Yeah, so he went and saw Frankenstein to get his legs repaired, came back, and he just fell captive to whatever the curse was on the Niners this year.
You know what it was? It was the Madden curse.
The Madden curse.
Every damn time. I wasn't a believer until this year. That's Wade.
That's crazy. I didn't even realize that he was on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I had him in fantasy last year, and he won me the championship. Then I drafted him again because I had to. And then he was just MIA.
Wow, he was on the cover. Holy shit! It had to have been.
I'm telling you,
the guy had a mystery like leg issue. Like no one even knows what it was.
No, it's like it was supposed to be like just his knee. I'm pretty sure it was his knee the entire offseason.
It was his calf, right?
His calf, yes. Yeah. It was calf the entire offseason. And then like the day before the season opener, they're like, actually, it's an Achilles. Everyone's like, what the fuck? He might be out 2 weeks. And then he's just out forever.
I feel like that has to be disclosed. Like they had to know. And I feel like that has to be disclosed.
They did know, and I hate them. Yeah.
I know it's like dumb for us fantasy players to bitch about it, but like it is dumb to not disclose that type of information, especially when you're partnered with a sports book.
Yeah. I wasn't, but like they should have told me anyways. I was so upset. I was ready to wrestle like Kyle Shanahan, like one-on-one in a match oiled up. Me and him. I was gonna kill him. But it's over now. He paid his penance by missing the playoffs.
Paid his penance. People, I think Kyle Shanahan might be the most hated head coach in his own fan base in the entire league.
He might also be like the most hated head coach that's actually is like a good coach.
Yeah.
Like he is a good coach. Like that's not, there's no disputing that, but like he just like it just seems to fail miserably at like the worst possible time every year.
Mm-hmm. It's not his fault that against Philadelphia he's got McCaffrey playing quarterback. Like
no,
that was, oh man, I feel bad for him. Like he's got to get there eventually.
I don't know. He's been there. He's been there.
Yeah, fair. He's been there and he failed. Yeah, true.
Rough scene.
Well, my second team, and like I said, this isn't really in order. These are just kind of teams that I felt like fit the bill. And this might be arguable, though. I have the Colts. And
I thought about them.
The Colts, for my expectations, I had them 8-9. They finished 8-9. So technically speaking, they met my expectations, but they faced their division and like the Dolphins with a backup. So that was like 5 of their wins. I think their best win was like the Steelers in week 3. So I put little stock in their strength of victory. And they had the most toxic locker room probably in the league. Like they were up there. Anthony Richardson's taking him out of football games. Shane Steichen starting Joe Flacco and then putting Richardson back in, even though the locker room was like, we don't want to play for this fucking guy. And it was just a mess. Like after such a promising year last year with Gardner I wasn't even looking for them to make the playoffs. Like some people were saying, they're one of those teams that are quarterback away that can really compete in the AFC. And I'm like, you guys are kind of out of your mind, but at least you can have a team around the young quarterback. He can take a few steps in the right direction. And then in year 3, it's like, okay, Richardson's ready to break out. But Richardson was a criminal to that organization. Like he was everything that you don't want in a quarterback and a teammate. And it's like, what do you do now? So they certainly failed, I think, a lot of people's expectations. And even though I was not even there with them, they still failed mine.
Yeah, I thought I don't even know if I thought that they'd be that good. But like the thing with Richardson is like, obviously he's like younger than most of the rookies in this draft class. Like he's a young dude. Like he was young for his draft class by like 2 years. But like when you're a developmental guy, I want to see at least a little improvement. And he didn't show any improvement at all, really. He had a few good games, but dude, he couldn't complete a pass. And I barely ever say that. Like I barely ever like would rag on a quarterback for completion percentage, but like that was bad. And I will say like his receivers dropped everything, but their passing game sucks. Like the entire thing sucks. Flacco sucked, which is weird because he was good last year. Like they're like no matter what they're running out there, it was just gonna suck because I think that's a Steichen issue more than anything.
Yeah, totally. And to your point about Flacco, it's like he was good last year. He was competent with Cleveland, and there was an opportunity for a similarly structured offense in Indianapolis, and the operation was a complete disaster. And I don't even think they tried to, play. I guess they did play to their strengths. I feel like Jonathan Taylor had a better year down the stretch, but it certainly felt like it took him a while to get going. And, if Flacco is not able to figure it out, and even still, Richardson is somehow 10 times worse. Like you said, he could not complete a pass. Like completion percentage can be taken with a grain of salt sometimes, but that number was literal. Like it was as bad as it looked.
Yes. There were games where like he completed less than 10 passes. A lot of them. That can't happen. Like you cannot win games doing that unless you have a roster like Philly. That's the only way. If you have a roster like Indianapolis, which is pretty average, you're not winning if your quarterback can't complete more than 15 passes in a game. It's not happening. So that was a good pull. I guess I just didn't think of them because I was just like, I don't think my expectations were that high anyways. But yeah, they look gross for the future. I don't feel good about them at all.
They might fit a description for later on, but
they may.
We can keep that tabled.
Yes.
Another team I wanted to talk about here quickly too was, this is probably the last team I feel. Well, actually, I have two teams that I feel obligated to talk about, and one is the Falcons.
Yeah,
they feel like a given. I wasn't high on them. I wasn't like they're going to make the NFC Championship game or anything, but I mean, they could have won their division. They had a multi-game lead on the second place team in Tampa, and they happened to already beat them both times. So they had the tiebreaker with a multi-game lead. That might be a bigger blown lead than the Super Bowl blown lead. Like, how do you blow a division lead with multiple wins over the second place team, and you have the tiebreaker completely on lock?
Yeah, and Tampa, Tampa felt like a better team all year, which is crazy because, like, I don't know how Atlanta even had that lead on them. They must have just beaten bad teams. There's no other way. Because, like, I never felt like they were even close to being a better team than Tampa, especially when Kirk Thuggins was out there just, throwing 30-mile-an-hour softballs at the end of the season. After his 500-yard game, where, like, Kadarius Hodge went crazy, after that team felt bad. It did not feel like a good football team.
Well, they went on that. They had that ridiculous streak of luck to start the year. Like, they were pulling wins out of their ass that they had no business winning, and that proved right there that it was just Kirko's luck. Like, that was their season. That was the Viking season a couple of years ago when they lost to the Giants in the wild card, and he brought that luck over to Atlanta, and it got them to a division lead at like the bye week, and then after that, it was It was just awful. And I I did not think Raheem Morris. I didn't like the way they handled the quarterback situation in the offseason.
It was so
And
bad.
people will sit here and say, oh, it was smart because now they have their quarterback of the future and they're able to, like, people are trying to rationalize the decision making, but I don't care if Penix works out or not. You do not pay a quarterback that much money in the offseason coming off an Achilles injury if you know that there is that much risk to the point where you feel like you have to draft a quarterback 8th overall.
Like if you pay him so much money, and it was like what, 4 years?
Mm-hmm.
That's way too long. That's way too long for someone that's that old, who's like, he's played good football, but like he just shredded his Achilles. Like, and he's old and he's already somewhat unathletic. So now that he has a blown Achilles, he can't move. He can't move at all. And then, to what you said, they were so unconfident in that they drafted a kind of project-y quarterback in Penix to sit behind him for those 4 years. Or was the plan for Kirk just to not finish out his contract and leave? Like, either way, you either wasted a premium draft pick if Kirk was great, or you just paid someone like $50 million to do nothing.
Yes.
So yeah, bad handling, really bad handling.
Yeah. So from that point forward, I was not confident in them. I mean, I don't know if there was a team with a bigger need than Atlanta at pass rusher, but I don't know what their plan was with that. I know Judon was acquired, but I was waiting for them to go and get Hassan Reddick at some point before the deadline. Like, I don't know how the Jets weren't willing to just give that guy up for like a bag of chips eventually. Like, they had to have been.
The Falcons are in talks for everybody. Yeah.
They were, in the offseason too. They were connected to Reddick, and then eventually, I think, I don't know what happened honestly, but then they pivoted to Judon, and I was thinking their pass rush is still bottom of the league in every metric by the deadline. You are in position to win your division. Like, maybe do something to capitalize on your season that you went and got a $40 million quarterback for. Like, isn't the whole point to be a contender? Isn't that why you went and got Kirk in the first place? Like,
or maybe we can reminisce on the time that they were in talks to get Lamar Jackson when that whole weird thing was going down, and they wanted no part of it. Well, they did, and then they kind of backed out. So I hope they feel fantastic about that, because imagine having Lamar and Bijan with that offensive line and an upcoming defense. Like, oh my God.
And Drake, I love
that's a contender. Line. Yes. That's a contender.
That might be, if granted their secondary was, talk about terroristic. Like, I'll never forget the touchdown Jefferson scored where like the safeties ran into each other and he's backpedaling into the end zone. Like,
but they're so close though. Like, they have two good pieces at the secondary. Just the other ones were bad. Like, the other 2 or 3 pieces were really bad. But like, when you have Bates and AJ Terrell, like, it's not that, like, you can work with that. You can go somewhere from there. But yeah, that team could have been a contender if they, were smart ever. But sorry, guys.
Yeah, alas, they were not.
You had Kirk and Penix. That's so terrible.
Well, I'll quickly cover this team and then we'll move on to the players for this. But I also had the Cardinals. Like, I think I had them around 8-9 or something where they finished. But my expectation, and I guess this could tie into the players too, which it kind of does. Like, the offense was just so underwhelming. I don't know what. There was such high expectations. I guess I'll just segue that into this. I put a couple players for failed expectations, but my one player was Marvin Harrison.
Absolutely.
And it's not his fault that the expectations were that high.
That they were that high, yeah.
Yeah. But he certainly was not, in his first year, everything he was hyped up to be. Like, Maserati Marv was supposed to be, blazing past every defensive back he was up against, and he was not.
He was a Corolla. He was reliable, but it wasn't, nothing to write home about at all. He wasn't like the best receiver on his team at all. Like, Trey McBride was dominant at certain points, but Marvin Harrison had that one, was it against the Rams? Early, like week 2, I think. for week 3. Like he dominated them and then just was average the rest of the season. I know. I kind of felt crazy having him as my wide receiver 2 from that class because I was so high on Neighbors. So I wasn't quite. I still had him as a top 10 receiver though, like a top 10 player. Like I thought like it would revive them a little bit, and we'd see a little bit of what we saw with like D-Hop and Kyler Murray, which was fun. Like they were a good offense. But I guess that's kind of what happens when you lose a really good offensive-minded coach, and in comes Gannon and company. It was bad. Like, so I don't know if they surpassed, like they were worse than my expectations, but like Marvin Harrison was for sure.
Yeah, Kyler Murray too. I mean, it seemed like he regressed as a passer, which was unfortunate. But
yeah,
who is your player for failed expectations?
I had Stroud for that one.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Oh, we can talk about this one.
And it wasn't that like he was just like bad, but it was just like to see like it wasn't like obviously things went wrong. Like the offensive line was wrong, and his receiving core was banged up. But like the facing through adversity and like having really good games when things were going wrong felt really difficult for him to do. Like standing strong in the pocket and delivering passes when you're getting hit was hard for him to do. So I think going from what would he have, like a 23-5 touchdown ratio to a 20-12 touchdown to interception ratio, like that's a big regression. And it wasn't like a disappointment that like I think he'll just be bad forever. I think he just obviously kind of like physically regressed from his rookie year. When the situation really wasn't perfect. But I think he'll bounce back plenty when he has a healthy receiver core.
Yeah, I actually, I guess it depends on how you look at it, because for me, he regressed, no doubt, but I look at the reason why, and instead of, and I guess this kind of contradicts how I view him, because to me, especially going to this year, I was very high on him. I still am very high on him. And a quarterback like him, I felt like when the injuries were starting to fall with the receivers and the offensive line was really starting to become a problem, I felt like there were like 2 or 3 games where he was doing virtually everything he could. He was making every throw possible. Like I felt like given the circumstances, he was playing well, even if his stat sheet didn't look great. But then he certainly fell victim to everything else around him. And like you said, he just wasn't making like an average CJ Stroud play. He was missing average CJ Stroud throws. I think he was definitely feeling Sam Darnold syndrome in the pocket.
Yeah.
His internal clock, I think his internal clock was fucking busted. Like
it's kind of always felt like that was one of the things when I was scouting him that I put down was that he has flashes of being able to like be this crazy playmaker. Like we saw like in the Georgia game when he went absolutely berserk. But it's never been consistent. Like there's always like a stretch of games that he'll like try really, really hard and make insane throws. And then a small stretch of games where he looks like gun shy and he looks kind of nervous. So like, that's kind of what we saw. I thought this season was when he had like the interior pressure. Cause like Juice Scruggs and company and like Jarrett Patterson weren't doing it at guard and center. Like that was when Stroud really took a pretty deep dive down and had like a really bad stretch of games that I think kind of cost them a higher seed. And I don't know. I think just like, I mean, the stats helped my case where his stats were pretty bad for like a supposed top 10 quarterback, which I think he is. But from me having him in that guy that was supposed to break into that tier and like challenge Herbert for like that number 5 spot and break in there, and then he just had the season that he had, I feel like that's a disappointment.
That's fair. That's fair. I guess regardless of the reason why, he still did not play up to par. Like the expectations that were set for him, he certainly fell well short. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. So I like that. I don't know how people are going to feel about that though. I like that one. I like that one. My other my bigger player that I had for failed expectations, and I know he only played like a fourth of the year, but L'Jarius Sneed had to have been the biggest Steve Spagnuolo merchant ever. Because that dude, I thought he was going to go to Tennessee and be one of the best offseason acquisitions of the year. And the dude was arguably the worst defensive back on his team. So, and I think that's kind of common knowledge. Like, I don't think anybody saw the 5 games he played and thought, okay, L'Jarius Sneed is, showing flashes. Like, he was awful. That it's really that simple. So for a team that in Tennessee that no one talks about because there's really not much to talk about other than their draft pick, I thought this is kind of off track, but I thought they approached this offseason properly in, building up the roster, trying to see if Levis can be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt like a guy like L'Jarius Sneed needed to be playing L'Jarius Sneed level football for that whole experiment to work out, even though they play opposite sides of the ball. But point being, he was certainly underwhelming for me.
That's a good pull because he was like in talks to be a top 10 corner in Kansas City. And there was like this thought that he was in that top tier. Like people were comparing him to Surtain at one point, which was kind of stupid at the time.
Yeah.
But some people always felt like he was the better corner next to McDuffie and that KC's defense would fall off without having Sneed. But it actually almost feels like it got better and Sneed fell off. Like there's no other word about it. He just fell off
entirely too. It wasn't even like gradual. Like he started the year off horrendously and never got better, and then he got hurt.
I mean, when was the last time that like a veteran ever went to Tennessee and did better aside from like Tannehill? Like it's like where Julio Jones, Tyler Boyd, like all these guys just go to die. Then AJ Brown leaves and becomes better. Like everybody that goes to Tennessee, they get worse.
That's
all
true.
Of them.
That's true. Wow, I did not think about that. Tennessee's the place to die. Oh my god! I remember
a good place to die, but
I remember the Julio Henry edits and Julio AJ Brown Henry edits. I was like, who's the third guy? Those were going crazy. But yeah, Sneed was my player for failed expectations. So we have two more categories. These I think will be fun. We have the There Is Hope tier or category that we'll start with, and the first team I went with, kind of cliche. Honestly, they're all kind of cliche, but another one that I felt like it was tough to get too flexible with.
Mine went too bad for the. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I went with the Panthers.
That's fair.
It feels like the way their season ended was probably the highest note that they've been on in a long time. And we were kind of talking about it earlier with Hubbard. He was excellent. They're going into year 3 with Hubbard now. 4 maybe 4, 3 or 4 with Hubbard. Their interior offensive line was very good, and it was a big reason for Hubbard's breakout. It was a big reason why Bryce Young turned things around. I'm hoping my boy Xavier Legette puts stuff together a little bit more this year. I saw him skin a squirrel alive on my Twitter timeline. So
that's terrifying.
Yeah, I wasn't very pleased to bear witness to that. I don't know why I even watched it. I saw the title. It was from one of those fucking aggregate accounts. It was like ML football, and it was like 9 alarm emojis saying graphic Xavier Legette skins squirrel, and I still watched it.
So, I watch it anyways. Yeah.
That was my fault. Hopefully he can, start skinning defensive backs instead.
No.
And yeah, I mean, I think Dave Canales is doing a very, very good job over there. I thought the way he handled the quarterback situation was very professional. He benched Bryce, which might have been controversial, but he stuck to his guns, let Andy play a little bit. I don't know what happened behind the scenes for Bryce to kind of build his confidence back up, but after losing Deontay Johnson, you would have thought that the wheels might have fallen off even further for Bryce, but it actually got way better. So maybe Deontay was that much of a problem. That's a mystery.
Yeah.
But Carolina for me was definitely a team that had to make this list.
Mine's a little bit like deeper rooted in terms of that they haven't given anybody any reason at all that they're going to improve whatsoever. But something just feels systematically like the Raiders are going to improve. And it's not soon. It's like, don't come back to me next year and be like, they didn't improve very much. Like, you have no idea. I'm talking like in like 4 to 5 years. Like I'm talking just like a culture change that I think is going to happen with Pete Carroll. I think Tom Brady's influence will be a little bit bigger than we thought in that organization. He's not just like a minority owner. Like he's going to be like all over the place in this organization, almost as like a Jerry Jones, but respected. And then all of their positions that really need filled are skill positions, really. Like they need the quarterback, they need the running back, they need the receivers. But the offensive line's not that bad. The defense has like a good, solid foundation to it, to where it's pretty fixable. Like they need a few corners, they need some DBs, but everything's pretty fixable outside the quarterback. And I think this draft will easily fix their running back and receiver issue. They can also pretty easily fix their corner issue. So really, they're just going to be a quarterback away for some time. So that kind of gives me hope for Raiders fans, as much as I've been wishing Russell Wilson upon them this whole time. I'll speak nicely to them this time and say, like, in half a decade's time, I think that they'll be a significantly better football team.
You've turned the corner.
I have. I'm
the
positive
Raiders
towards...
talk.
Yeah.
Wow. You're not wrong, though. I mean, the vibes around Vegas right now are immaculately high. It feels like a lot of people are believing in Pete Carroll, and there's no reason not to. I mean, the guy is the guy, what he did in Seattle. I mean, he's one of the most well-respected coaches of the 2000s in history of football. So, you know, he might only be there for 4 or 5 years, however long the guy stays in good health, but that's all it takes to turn. I mean, it takes 1 year, realistically. We've seen it happen with different teams already, where it takes 1 year to turn things around. So, yeah, I like that a lot, because they really haven't given any reason
none
to believe in them. But I did actually see, speaking of Russell Wilson, a notification come across my phone, and I thought of you in your comment that said it is possible that Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson reunite this offseason. So I think that plays in hand with the other rumor I've been seeing with the Steelers, that they're thinking about riding with Fields. So where does Russ go? Oh, Russ goes back to his old coach and becomes another bridge quarterback for another team.
Yeah, I mean, it seems, I know they've had like their animosity, but I mean, Russell flew out to that dude's like retirement, like on a whim. So it feels like there's some kind of like happy thing going on there. There's a lot of animosity between QBs and coaches anyway, so I wouldn't read too much into that. I think Pete Carroll going into a team that hasn't had a quarterback since Derek Carr left, will do anything desperately to get at least like an average to slightly below average quarterback, like I think Russell Wilson could be with his old coach. But yeah, it'll be better than what they've been running out the last few years, I think.
Yeah, totally. And oh man,
Jimmy G
comment. Jimmy G was that was bound to fail. I mean, anybody with a brain, anyone with a brain was going to see that failing. Josh McDaniels running the show with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like,
see, like this team isn't much better, but doesn't it feel better? Like, don't you feel good about like what's happening, like with the coaching and all that? Like, it doesn't feel the same as having Jimmy G and freaking McDaniels as my head coach.
There's actually a vision. Like, there just was no end game with McDaniels choosing Garoppolo and the way things ended with Derek Carr. It's like all you need to like inspire a fan base and an organization is like a vision that the average person could understand. If you're going into a season with a vision that is just so confusing that is tough to get people to believe in, nobody's going to want to play for you or believe in you, or like no one's going to want to go to your games. It's just, you need to have a clear vision for people to see and believe in. And I feel like this is a random concept to even get into right now, but I feel like it's that simple sometimes. If you can just lay the pieces out and say, we're doing this so it can lead to that, so we can reach this place, that's all you got to do. And that's what Vegas is doing. And it's important.
It's easier for some than others because some have access to like a quarterback. Like the other team I had down was the Bears, where like they haven't shown a lot of reason to like feel super optimistic yet, but they're laying out in front of you like this path, this plan of them building this player position up, this position player up, and then this coaching up. Like they have like a direct path of like what they're trying to build, and they're doing it like in front of us. Like they're drafting the good quarterback, they're getting the good coach they wanted. Everything's unfolding in front of them. That they haven't produced the results yet, but like I would be buying season tickets if I was a Bears fan right now. Like I feel good about what's going to be happening in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, they were on my list too, and they have to be. And it sometimes, like, I know people are overthinking that whole draft, but Caleb Williams was the obvious choice with the number 1 overall pick. I know Bears fans were like, so mad about that. I made multiple TikToks and got flamed by so many Bears fans for saying that there is no chance in hell Justin Fields is on this team by the time the draft comes around.
No.
And I was being told I was wrong. Like, how? And I would imagine people are pretty happy that I was right, because you now have Ben Johnson as your head coach, which I don't think would have been the case if Justin Fields was still there and things looked as dreadful as they did when he was the quarterback. Like,
he's not better than Caleb Williams.
No,
he's not nearly. No.
Oh my God, that was a time to be alive.
There's so much love for Justin Fields about like what he could do, and there's so much hate for Caleb Williams. So it seems like it intersects somewhere, but it doesn't. Like Caleb Williams, what he flashes on a day-to-day basis is so much higher than like what Justin Fields has ever flashed as a passer. So yeah, it was the easy choice. Bears fans are just kind of ridiculous sometimes.
Yeah, that was just a weird time. But
yeah,
to that point, like Ryan Poles, like the button was easy for him to hit. Like he just had to hit the easy button with everything, and that was draft Caleb Williams. And from there, even though the season wasn't great, he ended up firing Eberflus. They figured out things were wrong with Eberflus. They fired him. They did have a defensive coordinator that was like a pervert. They fired him too. So, like, I feel like there were just a lot of easy decisions for Poles and that front office to make, and they just continuously made that easy and correct decision. And now here they are with a lot of hope.
I remember what everyone was saying. They were like, keep Fields, draft Marvin Harrison.
Yes.
That would not have been better. Looking back at that, even in hindsight, that would not have been better. I promise you. I would rather have Odunze and Caleb than Marvin Harrison and Justin Fields. 100%. They made the right choice. Like Poles, it looks like he was off track for a while, but like now that we can see the vision unfolding, he's looking a little bit better now.
He probably just follows the right people on Twitter. Like sometimes I feel like that's all it takes with some of these big decisions that these guys have to make, and they overcomplicate them. Like, I don't know. I know people say that, we're on the couch and they're the ones in the building. It's like, sometimes it just doesn't have to be that serious. Like the decision is not hard to make sometimes.
No, sometimes I can agree with that. But like what access does like certain scouts have that I wouldn't have, like certain game film, like there's a certain point where I am putting more time into this than like a lot of actual scouts are, it feels like.
Seriously.
Like there are some scouts that are just plain bad. We can look at professionals that are just bad at their job sometimes. Like, I mean, if you go to Applebee's, I guarantee you there's some fry cook in the back that just isn't very good, even though he's done it for a while and he's better at it like maybe than me, but like he's still not very good. And that's okay. Like there could be bad professionals sometimes. And that's kind of what it seems like was happening with that scouting department for a while, but they look good now. They do follow the right people on Twitter now. Like they follow me, maybe. Like you never know, but dude, they look good. I'm happy for them.
Me too.
And that's
and I want Caleb to succeed.
Yeah, and like that makes my my player that I picked for There's Hope hard, because I had Bryce Young and Caleb Williams as my two guys. So I don't know. I'd have to think of somebody else, but I mean, it kind of to the points that we said, like it was just two quarterbacks that were getting so much hate in the first half of the season, in Caleb and Bryce Young. So like seeing them both finish the season a lot stronger than they started, and having like decent statistical seasons at the very end was a good thing to see. Like we kind of touched on all the points about it, but I can't think of anybody else right now.
Yeah, I also, I was, I guess, very Panther heavy now that I realize it, but I kind of did go with Bryce too. But somebody that I'm looking, I feel like this kind of is like a quarterback award, but
yeah,
it just feels easy to do it, and I'm gonna stick to that.
It was easy,
but,
yeah.
Going down the list, I think I'm gonna go with all right, hear me out. Geno Smith. Right. I feel like Geno Smith is so misunderstood by the entire NFL community. It's like, you either see what he is as a pure passer, or you think he's absolute hot dog shit. And I lean toward I see what he is actually as a passer because he actually is very exceptional.
Yeah.
And
I think I'm like in between those two where like I can see it and then I can also see the other side. But yeah, I like that pick.
He does make some just dastardly decisions sometimes, like just tweet worthy, like, oh no, Gino type of like
I've done that a few
tweet-worthy
times.
decisions. Like he does, I'll admit.
Yeah.
But I feel like in a more protected environment where he wasn't having to pass, I feel like as much as sometimes he's forced into, they try to run the ball. I think they were better at it this year, if I know off the top of my head, but they still, I don't think were great. The offensive line still wasn't great. Like, to me, and this is, I guess this could be a controversial topic for another day that we don't have to get into much right now, but Geno Smith to me clears Brock Purdy. Like,
yeah, easy.
And that's something I've gotten into arguments with people, which is mind-boggling to me.
Don't even bother with them.
So
they're
exactly
plebeians. They don't understand.
they don't. Like, Geno Smith is misunderstood.
No, they're sniffing lead. They have no idea. Like if you switched their teams, like if you switch their position, like Geno Smith does so much more to create for that offense than Brock Purdy does to create for their offense. And their offense wasn't even that good this year. So, like, 100%. When things break down, Geno Smith could still be a good quarterback.
He ran a lot, too, this year. Like, he kind of
weirdly. Didn't he, like, dust somebody in overtime one time? Or like late in the fourth quarter where he had, like, 50-plus rushing yards and, like, one final drive?
He had, like, I think he also had, like, a 35-yard rushing touchdown at some point, too.
He did. I remember that because I was watching it on Red Zone. God, what? I don't remember what game that was, but, yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was. Like, to me, Go ahead.
No, it's like the only reason I don't think I could ever put him on There's Hope season is like I don't know how many more he has left. He's like in his like mid-30s at this point, but like I mean, I do feel like he can have another good year yet next year. Like if they can reload on Lockett's replacement and make sure DK doesn't get traded because that feels like it might be happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think Geno. I don't know what direction that team is going in, but for some odd reason, I get the sense that they might be trying to move on.
Yeah.
At some point.
I get it from like an age perspective, I guess.
Like if I were a team that was a quarterback away, quote unquote, I'd inquire about Geno Smith. Like if you truly are a quarterback away and you think, especially in the NFC, like it's just a fucking disaster area over there. There's like two teams.
It's
otherwise,
so easy.
You can compete. Yeah. You can compete with everyone else. Like, why not inquire?
Yeah, I would. Just ask a question.
Yeah. Just like, hey, you got Howell over there. Just throw us the 34-year-old.
Let's do the Sam Howell thing.
Right.
He's not good.
Well, we'll get into our final category here, and then we do have a quick game that we're going to wrap up with.
Let's do it.
Austin's not entirely familiar with yet.
I have no idea what's happening, but this will be fun. Yeah. All right.
The final category is.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I'm going big or going home on this last category for teams
okay.
that. So how'd you categorize it in the dark or whatever?
Yeah, I named this category. It is dark. So
it is dark.
Yes.
So my picks are. It's not necessarily dark yet, but it's the same thing as the Raiders. I'm looking in the future and I'm just saying like. I'm not seeing growth. So pick one. I went with the Steelers.
Yes.
Who was a team that made the playoffs, but they don't feel better. Right? Like, is that a team that you put down?
The only reason I didn't is because I don't think it'll ever get dark enough in that organization because of how well ran it is. But to that same point, it depends on what your perspective of dark is, because right now it's dark and things have been going well. So
for them, yeah. For me, it's like I don't see this is not the year that they can fix their quarterback situation. And a lot of their stars, we've talked about before, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, they're in their 30s. So it's like if you can somehow get the window where like your best players are still good, but also you can find your quarterback, then sure. But like that doesn't seem reasonable at this point. It might be another 2-3 years so they can even find their quarterback, and by then your best players are gone. So it's like they kind of got to reload at that point. So I just don't see it. I don't see it smelling good in Pittsburgh for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. Looking at it from that perspective, it all depends on what point of view you look at it from. But from that one, yeah, no doubt. And I mean, I find myself in that line of thinking too, which is, I guess, weird that I didn't follow that here, because there's also another team on this list that, do they fit this description? I mean, yeah, I guess they do.
Go for it.
And I guess this isn't in order, but to relate to Pittsburgh, do they relate to Pittsburgh? I have the Dolphins. I have the Dolphins on here. I think the Dolphins are in big trouble. I publicly deemed the day they extended Tua as doomsday in Miami. Like, I went on record saying that, because it just was never. It's not going to work. There was nothing that they got out of Tua's career prior to that extension that told them this is our guy. Nothing, none. He put up pretty stats in the regular season, lost to every playoff team, and to anybody that was looking at that offense objectively, he was the most system QB ever. Like, he is the system, but that's a bad thing in Miami,
right?
Like,
and that there's something too, like being I guess system quarterback when the system is really good, and it was for a second, like when you had Tyreek in his prime, and Jalen Waddle existed. And like they had a really good run game going with Mostert and Achane for like a little bit. Like, that was fun to watch. And then when it feels like when one aspect of it breaks down, the entire thing breaks down. Like when their run game wasn't as strong this year, they couldn't pass. And Tyreek is kind of looked like he was well far off from his usual self this year. Jalen Waddle, I have no idea where he was. And throwing Tua back in that, like, it almost feels like purgatory for like a little bit.
Yes.
Like, they're too good to rebuild something to where it needs to be, but they're still bad enough where they're not going to win a Super Bowl anytime soon or come close.
That was why that was my line of thinking to the Steelers. Like, there is just there's no realistic end goal. Like, obviously their end goal is they have their franchise quarterback, they lock him up, and then they do their best to build around him and win a championship. But like I said, I don't think there had been any point in his career other than like maybe that one Chargers game where he hit that throw on the run up the sideline, like late.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the only moment that I ever was like, wow, nice Tua. Otherwise, it was just a whole bunch of, Tua doing his job, being very poor at play extending the offense, as we came to learn. And this is something that I had a problem with before it broke down this season, was just how much attention to detail it required to run the Mike McDaniel monster, as I called it. It's like Tua didn't have and no one human has the mental capacity to be as sharp as it requires to run that offense consistently for 20 games or however many in a season. Like, and someone like him, if a play breaks down, he's not able to extend it. So he has to get every finite detail right. And he can't.
He's a bottom 3 quarterback in the NFL. It feels like when the play breaks down, like throwing on the run or having to like make a decision and not get concussed again. Like, it feels like everything that goes wrong with that team is like if he doesn't get the ball out in one split second. And I've had to see that in person. I was also there when he was on the 50-yard line.
Wow.
And he did that whole thing. So, yeah, I mean, Tua has been going through it the last, 2-3 seasons now. And it doesn't feel like it's getting any better. And they're not in position to really get any better. So that's a really good pick.
Yeah. And now with Tyreek wanting out, Jalen Ramsey's 30. They're one of the best D linemen was like a 39-year-old Calais Campbell. And
Teron Armstead's about out of there too. Yeah.
Teron's done. Like, it's just not good. Like, I don't see this team figuring it out anytime soon. And it's all going to be because they decided Tua was their guy. And I think they knew they were going to extend him when they let Christian Wilkins walk. Like, that was, to me, in my mind, it was like the big decision. Like, and ultimately they did sign Tua, and I'm sure they could have made both work. But I just felt like they were better off keeping all of the pretty pieces and letting Tua go when the time came, but they made the wrong choice, and I think they are going to suffer for a very long time.
It's a good pick. I like that. Do you have it? So who is your number? Was that your number one? I thought you said you had like a different number one.
Yeah, I had them, and then I had the Colts, but I feel like we talked about them enough.
That is true. Yeah, that's a team where it's like, I struggled with the question because there's either teams where it's like total darkness, where like I see them being trash forever, or teams that are good now that like I just see a darker future ahead. I think both of them kind of fit that, where like they're decent squads, but I don't see them improving much from this point out.
Yeah.
So yeah, they fit that actually kind of perfectly.
Yeah, and the other team I had was the Browns, which I also feel like was a shoe-in. Like,
well, they're just darkness. Like they're just like actual darkness. Yeah.
I mean, this is a hot take. I don't think Kevin Stefanski is a good head coach. Like,
I don't think he's a great head coach. No, I think he's fine.
He won 2 Coach of the Year awards purely because he was the coach of the Browns. Like, if the Browns didn't have the reputation that they had, and I get, especially the first time around, you know, he probably deserved it. But the second time, I don't know. Like, there are guys in this league that don't sniff that award that I feel like have been worthy of it for years, aka Sean McDermott.
Yeah.
And
there's one thing I said about the Browns a while ago that kind of got some flack, but when they had their really good season, I was almost not even that impressed. And the fact that they're this bad now, it's crazy because when you are that bad for a decade straight, the amount of premium draft picks you accumulate is ridiculous. Like when you get that many first overall picks, I hope you're good. Like this is what you're supposed to be now. That's the whole point of having this many first round picks or first overall picks, is that you eventually can create a team with a bunch of the best guys in their class, but they couldn't build anything outside of that. And then the whole thing with Baker happened where they just kicked him out of town, who was the only quarterback to ever care about them. And now they're paying for it with being one of the worst teams in the NFL. So I don't feel bad at all.
Yeah,
I feel great about it.
Bad. Yeah, I don't feel bad the way that happened, the way that went down. And I read earlier, actually. I don't even think I was privy to this, but Baker and Stefanski's relationship, I guess, was like in a really bad place, especially near the end of it. So I know there's been speculation that the ownership has something to do with the whole quarterback situation and why they keep forcing Deshaun out there and everything like that. But at least as far as the Baker days go, Stefanski had a hand in that. And he had a hand in saying he should be gone. So that to me is not coach of the year worthy decision making.
No. In fact, like they're in a spot where like they have a chance to get the quarterback, but it doesn't even feel like they will. Like it doesn't feel like they're going to draft Cam Ward if he's there at where are they, 2 or 3? I think they're 2. They're 2, yeah. It almost feels like they're just going to get Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter or whatever and just hope that they can find the quarterback another way. Kirk Cousins. Yeah. That's what it's going to be. Right, I'm writing that down.
Maybe they call up the Browns should call up Seattle for Geno. No, they should. Well, I feel bad. I feel bad for Geno.
You can have what is Seattle? Seattle needs offensive line pretty bad. Interior offensive lineman. Give him one of those guys.
There you go.
Guard. Both guards for Geno Smith. God, that's so bad. And the only other last team I wrote for that, and it wasn't that they fit the manner of this episode or of this category, but it got me thinking a little bit was, do you feel good about the Lions going forward?
Oh, this is a can of worms. The Lions.
Nice and concise. Yeah.
I mean, Detroit, I like Goff. I like Jared Goff a lot. I think he's winning at life. He managed to be the first overall pick, play in a Super Bowl. He revived his career in an awesome organization. He is dating a very attractive woman, making a gajillion dollars. He's doing well for himself.
Yeah.
Although, is he the Super Bowl winning quarterback that Detroit is going to need? I think I can agree with you. No.
Not if you don't have Ben Johnson. If you don't have Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn, I don't see the team getting better. And the fact that they couldn't win with what they just had makes me feel that, like, when you have to start paying these guys these really good draft picks you just picked, like they're gonna cost some money. And I don't know. I don't feel like they're going to be getting any better. That was just a quick little thing. I just wanted to see where you're on with that.
I have this. I'll save for a future episode, but I have a fun hypothetical for that. That, like I said, I'll save. But
okay,
I think we've covered most of it. I just wanted to play that game real quick that I want to start doing every week.
Yes.
So every Thursday, I was thinking that we could start a segment called Set the Line. Set the Lines. I don't know how it's Set the Line, we'll say.
That sounds good. Yeah.
And basically, it's where one of us or both of us present a completely absurd, like, hypothetical, and we set the odds on it, like a money line or an over-under or a spread, maybe.
Oh,
so my bet for you is going to be this. What happens first? Jerry Jones dies or retires? Set the line.
I have to do the math really quick. How old is he?
82 years old. He's 82.
All right.
Are you drawing?
No.
Looks like you're drawing.
Right. Let's see here. 82. Okay. I think I got it. So I think he dies first. I did the math. So I said 82 to 93 via hooker poisoning. And then I said 82 to never for retiring. So I do think he dies much, much earlier than we thought.
So
that was at 93 years old. Yeah.
If this was if it was a money line versus retirement and death, what do you have? What do you have death set at? The clear favorite, I would assume.
Yeah, like minus 1,000 probably.
Oh,
like I feel great about it.
Oh my god.
Maybe minus 600.
I was gonna set it at like minus 250. But
no, that feels pretty like there's still like a good chance that he could retire first. I think he just dies in his office when he calls. I'm changing it from hooker. I'm changing it to intern that he coerced into being a hooker for him because he's creepy. And then he's not as classy as Robert Kraft. It's not going to be someone that he like pays to do it. Like it'll be for like do you want this job? Here's what you have to do. And then she's going to think it's creepy. He's going to poison her, or she's going to poison him. Sorry. Before he retires at 93 years old specifically. I'm circling that.
Oh, wow. So he's going to make it to 93?
I do. I think that he is like so much witch magic that like, I don't think that he can die. I think it's like the Pope where like when you're the Pope, you don't die till you're like 100 because you're the Pope. I don't know why. It's the same thing. I think that Jerry Jones is like an evil Pope for the Dallas Cowboys. He will never retire, but he will die at 93.
Okay, so I was going to
say about that, actually.
If we put over-under on his age, 93 and a half, since that's what you said.
I would take the under, because I feel confidently that's going to happen at 93. Like, so confidently. So I'll take the under 93 of Jerry Jones' death. If FBI is listening, I have nothing to do with the poisoning when it happens, but I'm just predicting.
All right. So the line was set. We set the line.
Yeah, I'm writing
Austin
that down.
has it at minus 600 that Jerry Jones dies before he retires. So that makes retirement probably plus 450, maybe plus 500.
I don't really know how that works, but yeah, I wouldn't take those. I wouldn't take that. When's he going to retire? He's just talking about being a head coach now. Like,
yeah, seriously.
Jerry Jones ready to be a head coach. Think he's ready to retire?
Did you see what he said about how fans feel about the state of the team and how it makes him feel?
No, I just heard him like he wouldn't stop talking about like, I know it's a risky hire, but yeah, we know it's a risky hire. Dummy. Like
he said,
what did he say about that?
I think word for word, he said, oh man, I gotta pull it up. Something about I have it. He said, where'd it go? He said this. Jerry Jones on how the reaction of Cowboys fans make him feel. There is a very low percentage of this that is smiles and glory holes.
What?
So your prediction of coercing an assistant and then she poisons him probably on track after that comment.
Yeah, there's a glory hole like under his desk. Is that what he's talking about? Like, he's not using it anymore because he's so sad. Like, it still works when you're sad, Jerry. Maybe not when you're 82, but that's when it works best, Jerry.
Probably has a whole drawer.
No, poor guy.
It doesn't work.
Oh, that's so sad.
I don't feel bad for him. He attended that rally like 7 years ago, and I came out and like no one talked about it. People talked about it for like
the one like in Arkansas when he was
the anti.
Yeah. I never forgot about that. I'm sure like the 50 like black men that play for him didn't forget about that either.
Yeah.
Like so that's a pretty bad look, Jerry.
Yeah. I don't feel bad for him. I don't feel bad for him at all.
No. I think I just attended like the most racist rally you could ever possibly attend ever.
And an image comes out. I don't even know if he like addressed it. And then it just kind of like
it was like it was a long time ago. It was a different time. Like poor God. That's horrible.
Well, that's set the line. So I think that'll be fun to do every week. We'll do it like every Thursday going to the weekend. Okay. Obviously, there won't be football on for a while, but once there is, we can
alternate questions if you want. Like we can try to think of a question for the other. Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be better that the other person doesn't know it, so we can alternate who comes up with it every week.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So comment down below. Let us know. Do you think are you betting that Jerry Jones dies at -600? Are you putting every dollar you have on that, or are you going to take the value that he retires first?
I'm putting my whole paycheck this week on that. I'm ready.
Hey,
we can start a pool.
At your odds, you're not going to make too much back. Your odds are just he's going to die. It's almost guaranteed.
I know. I should have made it more reasonable.
All right. Well, I think that's about all I have for episode 6. Do you have anything left?
The only last thing I had was the no hope player. And I'm just gonna say it. Not even no hope. Just the player that like everyone thinks it's not his fault, but I do think it's his fault. It's Kyle Pitts. It's the last one I have.
Ooh.
The last one I have where I think his career is his fault thus far. It's not quarterbacks.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now that I think after this year, people will get behind. But if you would have said that like 340 days ago, you probably would have been shot with a bow and arrow. Like
I did say it. I said at the beginning of the year, and people were so mad at me. Yeah. They've never watched Kyle Pitts run a route or try and block. I've never watched.
Yep. Nope.
That was all I had. I had to get that one out there.
People finally saw him run that like slant route and give like no effort. That one, I remember seeing some clip of him running a slant, and he like didn't give effort.
I think I do remember that.
And I think that was when people started to realize like, okay, maybe it is his fault. So that was a good one. I don't know why. I guess I skipped it because I didn't even realize I didn't even put anybody. So that's probably why I mentally just skipped over it.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. Well,
but
that's a conversation I think we also should have. We could table that.
I'm willing.
All right. We're going to wrap it up. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you place your bets on Jerry Jones' death/retirement. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, comment, share. The link tree for Against the Blitz. You can find us on any social medias is down in the description. You can follow us on every social media platform. You can also follow both of us on the social media platforms that we are active on. Those link trees are in the description as well. But appreciate you guys for watching. And I did finish up a very corny outro that is going to be consistent. So
all right.
enjoy the corny outro.